This is DTM's first ever champion. Yes, this Jim Cornette-looking chuffing bloke can proclaim to be the sport's inaugural Meister. And today I'd like to tell you how this bespectacled boy from Bochum took German motorsport by storm without winning a single race in DTM history. My name's Alexis, we're going back to 1984, and this is the story of how Volker Strycek became the inaugural DTM top dog. So, for starters, DTM 1984 wasn't DTM 1984. I mean, it was 1984, not the book, not the Apple commercial, the actual year of our Lord and Savior with all the pop culture anxiety you can imagine. And while Formula One, rallying, or sports car racing were all the rage, DTM wasn't a household name yet. See, throughout the late 70s and early 80s, West Germany's touring car racing scene had been dominated by the DRM, an acronym for Deutsche Rennsportmeisterschaft, which literally translates to German Motorsport Championship. All you need to know for now is that it was immensely popular, beautifully vicious, and horrendously expensive, the well-known trio of racing in this part of the world. Group 5 had been the rule set from 1977 to 1982, yet the series was to transform into a lackluster sports car championship from 1983 onwards. Not lackluster in spectacle, as you could bear witness to, say, Porsche's masterclass, though the field whittled down year by year. Sorry, Porsche. Unsurprisingly, a new touring car series was needed to fill the void, inspired by the Italian Super Turismo Championship. Back then, it was to be called Deutsche Produktionswagenmeisterschaft, German Production Car Championship, DTM. As a basis, the Group A rule set was to provide a framework befitting of a close competitive series.
Und zwar Autos jeder Größe, jeden Hubraums und jeder Stärke. Vom 300 PS starken BMW bis zum 150 PS starken Opel Kadett reicht die Palette künftig nicht mehr unterteilt in Kategorien. Eine klassenlose Gesellschaft, so nennt man sie bereits, die hier ums badische Motodrom driftet. Doch der PS-Marxismus basiert auf einer anderen Norm, dem sogenannten Leistungsgewicht. Gewicht des Fahrzeuges dividiert durch PS-Zahl soll Chancengleichheit zwischen Großen und Kleinen schaffen. Wer viel Kraft hat, wird mit zusätzlichen Gewichten belastet.
God, I love old crappy television. It's a formula that sparked excitement right from day one, including our main character for this small adventure. In a way, this was the perfect step for Volker Strycek to take. His background wasn't being a go-karting champion like Stefan Bellof, nor could he count on the family legacy of a Hans-Joachim Stuck. In fact, his parents weren't too pleased when teenage Volker told them about his plans of racing himself someday. While this is an era of racing that was expensive, you can't compare it to the mid-2020s. All that Volker needed to get started in the late 70s was a friend's car whom he had assisted back in his days of competition. Humble beginnings, cobbling together a bit of cash, racing the rousing Renault 5 all across the Bundesrepublik. To thrive in this field of hungry mavericks was to prove yourself as a worthy competitor, but that wasn't what famous racing journalist Rainer Braun had predicted for Volker. First impressions of Mr. Strycek were that of a timid kid, deer in the headlights type, mildly overwhelmed with, well, everything. As such, Rainer's assessment during the first test was clear. Kid, go find a different passion. Tennis? Maybe. Table tennis? Football? Probably not football. Regardless of elderly advice, Volker decided to stick around. Flipping his Renault from time to time, working night shifts as a mechanic to keep the adventure going throughout 1976, 77, 78. And, in due time, his luck was to turn around. German Renault R5 Cup champion 1978, Volker Strycek, a second national championship in 1980, and an international crown only added to the ever-growing burr directed at Rainer Braun. In the wake of his success, you'd assume his next step would include championships such as DRM. Instead, the early 1980s could have, and arguably should have, spelled the end of Volker's furious tour through touring car excellence. He'd promised his parents that if he was gonna go racing, he would return to school at some point in time. So, frustrated with having to pay for this entire adventure himself, he sold his Renault, packed his bags, and went home. The cost, the travel, not knowing whether you'd be able to afford your way home once you'd made it to the track, Volker had just reached a breaking point. After getting rid of his boxy companion, a friend of his, a well-known car salesman from Bochum, decided to give Volker a call. Hey, buddy, you know how I've been racing at the Nordschleife in my BMW 320 for the last little while? Yeah, so I kind of fucking suck, and you sold your car recently, so wanna come and join me at the Nürburgring? And obviously, Volker wanted to. He loved the idea of racing just a little too much, and they won their class first time out. The name of his influential buddy? Mr. Fred Michael Gubin. Fast forward to when Bochum's finest was invited to Mr. Gubin's 40th birthday party. His newest business idea? Buying a BMW 635 CSI from Schnitzer for the purposes of entering the freshly announced DTM in 1984. Remember, this wasn't a huge manufacturer project. As varied as Group A touring car racing was in the mid-1980s, there were quite a few international playgrounds for them, the manufacturers, to shine, rather than joining this new series. So, listen, Volker, I want to join DTM next year, BMW and all, and I need a driver. I talked to my buddy about it, name's Rainer Braun, you might have heard of him, and he proposed two candidates for the seat. One's Stefan Belloff, the other one is you. Belloff was to spend his 1984 racing both Porsches and, you know, an underpowered Tyrrell in Formula 1. Whereas, ironic as it must have seemed to all involved, Volker Strycek agreed to this new odyssey. Their competition was to consist of 16 cars. Sorry, wait, I didn't phrase that well. Let me retry. Their competition consisted of 16 different types of cars, or 7, depending on which source you believe. From Alfa Romeo Alfettas to Jaguars, Rovers, Opel Monzas, Opel Mantas, or the legendary 635 CSI. Also, don't be fooled by this not being your typical manufacturer's cup. The grid still consisted of European racing royalty: Hans-Joachim Stuck, Olaf Manthey, Manfred Winkelhock, Walter Brun, and Harald Gross, just to name a few. To swim with sharks was to not drown in the whirlwind of West Germany's new touring car masters. Add to this that driving wasn't Mr. Strycek's sole priority. He'd been hired as an employee by Gubin, taking care of different roles in terms of mechanics and management. It was pretty much a mom-and-pop shop racing against some of the country's absolute finest. Expectations were low. Nevertheless, Strycek managed to shine right from the get-go. First time out at Zolder, Strycek clinched P3 and could have actually won the race if he hadn't been spun by Otto Fritzsche. Oops. Instead of the expected one-hit wonder, Gubin's golden boy / employee of the month finished race after race after race in the top 10, chucking in a podium or two as well for good measure. And as we're talking about a point system that rewarded consistency more than sheer pace, Volker Strycek had finagled his way into the lead of this championship. According to Volker, nobody within the team really thought about the title even once they'd climbed the standings. That might also go to show why they technically didn't win a race while actually sort of winning a race. Let me explain. Round 2, Harald Groß wins ahead of Volker Strycek. Great result for Gubin, no question. Yet, Harald Groß, one of the title favorites for 84, was disqualified after the race. So you'd assume Volker was to receive 20 points instead of 18, right? Wrong. As always, even in 1984, DTM is often known for its bullshit. Gubin didn't even protest this decision, as they seemingly couldn't grasp the possible impact of such a move, something that Mr. Strycek, according to his interview with the Alte Schule podcast, would do differently nowadays. September 23rd, 1984, ADAC Super Sprint Weekend, DPM season finale. This is where you'd expect some F1 2021 levels of drama, a fierce duel for the championship, but in the end, it was all pretty clear for all to witness. As long as Harald Groß doesn't win the race, Volker's the champion. And seeing as that's exactly what happened, Mr. Strycek had climbed from supposed Renault R5 failure, according to Rainer Braun, to the first ever Produktionswagenmeister of West Germany. Still, this wasn't the main event of the weekend. Did you catch all the prototypes on the poster? Yep, DRM was still going strong, even if only 15 cars competed in the race compared to DPM's 35 starters. The signs of decline were there for DRM, yet the top spot of German motorsport had not been claimed by what was to become DTM just yet. No TV footage, barely a few pictures, a story only told and retold by those who were there themselves. You know, stories like the poster that Volker and his team sent Mr. Rainer Braun after the 1984 championship was clinched, in the hopes that you end up being wrong quite a few more times. Your Volker Strycek. DTM 1984 was a rousing success, providing exactly the platform West German touring car racing desperately needed. Even so, such illustrious events came with a price. Literally. Bit by bit, manufacturers like BMW, Mercedes, and Opel would roll in, replacing small-time teams punching above their weight. The era of Gubin and teams in their vein was, to be short and sweet, gone by the end of the 1980s. What about Volker Strycek, though? His career led to the pastures of leading Opel's way in motor racing, whether it be in DTM, STW, or at the Nordschleife. Those management skills and mechanical knowledge paid off well in the end, didn't they? As much as he's well known in touring car circles, though, you'd not call him a mainstream superstar or even a legend in the same ballpark as Bernd Schneider, Manuel Reuter, Johnny Ciccarelli, and the like. Maybe it's because after winning the first title in DTM history, he was never able to repeat that level of performance, not at Gubin nor at Opel. Furthermore, his appearance remains timid, somewhat reserved, friendly, professional, well-liked by most behind the scenes. In a way, he was the perfect man to clinch the inaugural crown for the series, long before manufacturer interest and mainstream hype were to spike. His wasn't a tale of fierce battles, of public drama. He was a hardworking employee, first and foremost, professional to his very core. Boring? Possibly, but it's that calculating nature that provided him with enough patience to persist, irrespective of expectations. In a sport full of bent metal, he was smart enough to protect himself, his car, both to not break the bank and to secure all points necessary. A champion and, from all we can gather, a gentleman. It's why I picked this specific image as a basis for the thumbnail. Volker Strycek didn't look like a typical racing driver, talk like a typical racing driver, sound like a typical racing driver, behave what you'd expect from machismo-era touring car duels. He worked his way through all kinds of obstacles, proved his doubters wrong time and time again, and cemented his legacy to the point where, even far from the bright lights of 84 or the Nordschleife, he's still involved in DTM to this very day. His current job involves steering the luck of Team DTM Motorsport, a family-owned business not too dissimilar from where he started at Gubin, it seems. Once more, his management skills, his attention to detail, and sheer dedication are in high demand, so don't be surprised to see this face in the paddock from time to time. The sport's gone through all kinds of twists and bends over the past 40 plus years, but Volker is still here. No matter the cornet goggles or timid naturel, true racers, after all, are never to be judged by the cover of their proverbial book, even if that book happens to depict giant f***ing goggles. Volker, wah!